Welcome, beloved friend. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd be truly honored to have you join this growing family of faith and reflection. Every new heart adds something beautiful to our community. This testimony is one of those rare stories that stirs the soul, a moment that challenges what we thought we knew and opens our eyes to the transforming power of Jesus. As you watch, take a moment to let each scene sink in. Feel the weight of the story, the breakthrough, and the undeniable grace that changes everything. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us where you're watching from and share how this journey speaks to your heart. Your thoughts, reactions, and reflections help spark the kind of conversations that inspire faith, healing, and deeper understanding. Welcome again, and thank you for being part of something truly meaningful. My name is Ruqayya. I live in a small apartment on the edge of Amman, Jordan, a quiet place where the walls are thin and the neighbors' voices often fill the night. But for me, silence was louder than any sound. Most nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with memories I wished I could forget. I had once been married, full of dreams and hopes, but those dreams slowly turned into years of shouting, fear, and bruises that didn't always show on my skin. When the marriage finally ended, I thought I would feel free. Instead, I felt empty. People talked about me in whispers. Some said I had failed as a wife. Others said I must have done something wrong to deserve such pain. Their words cut deep. I started to believe them. I stopped going out unless I had to. Even prayer felt strange. I thought God was angry with me, that He had turned His face away. At work, I smiled so people wouldn't ask questions. But every time I came home and closed my door, the smile disappeared. I would sit by the window and watch the streetlights, wondering if anyone else in this world felt as lost as I did. Sometimes I tried to pray, but the words never came out. I just sat there, with tears running down my face, whispering, "God, do you still see me?" One evening, as I walked home from the market carrying a small bag of bread and vegetables, I saw a group of women sitting outside a corner shop, talking softly. Their faces glowed with warmth, their laughter light and sincere. There was something peaceful about them, something different from what I had known. I didn't understand why, but I couldn't stop watching them. That night, lying in bed, I kept thinking about their faces. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet stirring in my heart, something that almost felt like hope. A few days later, I saw those same women again. They were sitting at a corner table in a small cafe near the bus stop. I passed by slowly, pretending to look at something on my phone, but I kept glancing their way. They looked so at ease, so full of warmth. One of them, a woman maybe in her 50s, caught my eye and smiled. I quickly looked away, embarrassed. I wasn't used to strangers smiling at me without reason. But that smile stayed with me all day. It was the kind that made you feel seen, not judged. The next week, as I waited for my bus, I heard a gentle voice behind me say, "You're Miriam, right? I've seen you around." It was the same woman. Her name was Rania. Her voice was calm, like she wasn't in a hurry to talk or to leave. We spoke for a few minutes, about work, the weather, and little things that didn't matter much. But the way she listened made it feel like everything I said mattered. Before leaving, she said softly, "Some of us meet to read and talk about hope. You're welcome if you ever want to come." For days, I wrestled with the idea. What kind of group was it? What if they judged me too? I had spent so long trying to avoid being seen. But something inside me, something gentle and persistent, whispered that I should go. I didn't know it then, but that whisper wasn't just curiosity. It was the beginning of mercy finding its way to me. On a Thursday evening, I walked nervously to the address Rania had written on a small piece of paper. My hands were trembling. When I knocked, the door opened, and the smell of tea and fresh bread filled the air. I saw about 6 women sitting in a circle on simple cushions. They welcomed me like they had known me for years. No one asked about my past. No one looked at me with pity. They spoke about forgiveness, about how God still loves even those who feel unworthy. I sat quietly, pretending to listen. But deep down, Their words were breaking something inside me, the wall I had built to protect my heart. That evening, I listened as the women shared stories about their lives, not perfect ones, but broken ones like mine. One woman, her name was Salma, spoke softly about how she had once hated herself for the mistakes she made in her youth. She said she used to think God wanted nothing to do with her. But then she learned about Jesus, how he forgave people who were lost, how he lifted those who were ashamed, and how he gave peace where there was only pain. I sat still, my eyes fixed on the floor. Something inside me stirred, something I hadn't felt in years. When Salma said, "He doesn't condemn us, he calls us his daughters," it was like the words reached straight into the hidden part of me that still longed to be loved. For a moment, I felt warmth in my chest, almost like someone gently placed a hand over my heart. I tried to brush it off. I didn't want to cry in front of strangers. But tears found their way out anyway. Rania noticed and moved closer. She didn't ask me what was wrong. She simply whispered, "You're safe here?" Those 3 words melted something inside me. I had been surrounded by people for years but never truly felt safe. That night, I didn't speak much, but I listened carefully. The women talked about forgiveness, not as something earned, but as something freely given by God through his love. When the meeting ended, they hugged me before I left. It wasn't a polite hug, it was the kind that says, "You belong." On my way home, I couldn't stop thinking about what I heard. Could it be true that God still loved me? That he forgives without punishment? For the first time in a long while, hope began to whisper louder than shame. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by my window, watching the lights of the city fade one by one. My heart felt full yet unsettled, like something new was trying to grow inside me but didn't know how. I kept hearing those words in my mind, "He doesn't condemn you, he calls you his daughter." I wanted to believe them, but part of me still argued back. How can God forgive me after all I've done? After all I've been through? I whispered into the dark room. I thought of the pain I had caused, the anger I had carried, the bitterness that had poisoned my heart for years. I had shouted at people who cared, shut out anyone who tried to help. Sometimes, I had even blamed God for my suffering. The thought of forgiveness felt too heavy, too beautiful for someone like me. I picked up the small piece of paper Rania had given me. It had a verse written on it. I didn't understand all the words, but one line stood out, something about peace that passes understanding. I closed my eyes, holding the paper tightly. As I sat there, I felt something quiet surround me. It wasn't fear. It was calm, soft and still, like a presence that filled the room without a sound. My heart began to slow. I couldn't explain it, but it felt as though someone was near, not to judge, but to comfort. In that stillness, I felt a gentle awareness inside, as if he was letting me know that I had never truly been forgotten. That all along, through the nights of crying, through the years of silence, he had been there. Watching. Waiting. Loving. Tears fell again, but they were different this time. They weren't tears of regret. They were tears of relief, as if a heavy door inside my heart had finally opened. The next evening after I came home from work, I felt restless. The world outside was noisy, but inside my small room, everything was quiet, too quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. My heart felt heavy, yet something inside was drawing me to do what I had never done before, to speak honestly to God. Not with fancy words, not in fear, but in truth. I knelt beside my bed, not knowing what to say. My knees trembled as I whispered, "If you truly forgive, forgive me." The words came out shaky, but they carried years of pain, guilt, and longing. I didn't expect anything to happen. I thought maybe I would just cry a little and then go to sleep. But as I spoke, something changed. It was like a gentle light filled the room, not something my eyes could see, but something my heart could feel. My chest, once so tight, began to loosen. I felt warmth move through me, calm and deep. It was peace, not the kind that comes from solving problems, but the kind that settles deep inside your soul, whispering, "You are loved. You are forgiven." I couldn't stop crying. But these tears weren't heavy like before. They were clean, almost joyful. It felt like the shame I had carried for so long was slowly being lifted off my shoulders. I didn't hear a voice, but inside, I knew he was letting me know that I was no longer alone. That night, I slept like a child for the first time in many years. When I woke up the next morning, the sun looked brighter, the air felt lighter. The world hadn't changed, but I had. For the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt found. When I woke up that morning, everything around me felt different. Not because my life had suddenly become perfect, but because something deep inside me had changed. I went about my usual routine, making tea, washing my face, getting ready for work, but there was a quiet joy in my heart. I found myself smiling for no reason. The air coming through the window felt new, like it carried peace instead of dust. On my way to work, I looked at the people passing by, the tired shopkeepers, the mothers holding their children, the men rushing to catch buses, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible among them. I felt connected. I felt alive. I knew now that I was seen not by the world, but by God Himself. Later that week, I went back to the women's meeting. When they saw me, they welcomed me with such joy that I almost cried again. This time, I wasn't just an observer. I sat closer, listened more deeply, and even shared a little about my story, how I had prayed the night before and felt peace flood my heart. The women smiled knowingly. Rania said, "That peace is His gift. It means you've been forgiven." Her words were soft but full of truth. I felt tears again, but they were tears of gratitude. From that day, something inside me wanted to know more about this Jesus who forgives so freely, who restores so gently. I began to join their weekly gatherings, reading their small book of stories and learning about His love, not as a distant idea, but as something living, something close. There were still days when memories of my past tried to return, but each time they did, I would remember that moment beside my bed, the peace, the warmth, the love. And I would whisper quietly, "I am His daughter now." The days that followed were like learning to walk all over again, not with my feet, but with my heart. I began to see life differently. I no longer woke up dreading the day ahead. Instead, I found myself whispering small prayers, thanking God for another chance, for breath, for peace. Even when the day was hard, that quiet joy stayed like a soft flame that refused to die. At work, people noticed something about me had changed. A coworker once asked, "Miriam, why do you smile so much lately?" I just said, "Because I found peace." She laughed, not understanding, but I didn't mind. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just knew that the emptiness I once carried was gone. Every week, I went back to the group. We read stories about how Jesus helped people, the sick, the lost, the broken. Each story felt like a mirror of my own life. I realized He wasn't just someone from old times. He was real, still alive, still changing hearts. One evening after the meeting, I walked home alone under the quiet Jordanian sky. The streets were mostly empty, the lamps casting soft light on the path. I felt that same gentle presence again, the one that filled my room that night I prayed. I didn't hear words, but in my heart He let me know that I didn't have to keep looking for acceptance. I already had it. I didn't have to earn love. I was loved already. That night, I stood on my balcony, looking at the stars. For years, I had looked at those same stars and felt forgotten. But now, as I watched them, I smiled. I whispered, "Thank you." It felt like the beginning of a friendship. Not a religion, not a rule, but a real relationship. Even though I had found peace, life didn't suddenly become easy. Some days, old wounds tried to speak again. There were mornings when memories from my past came rushing back. The shouting, the loneliness, the cold nights when I felt unwanted. Sometimes I caught myself wondering if I truly deserved this new life, if God might one day change His mind about me. One afternoon, I passed by the neighborhood where I used to live with my former husband. Everything looked the same. The old shop at the corner, the children playing in the dust, the sound of a familiar radio playing softly. I stood there for a moment, frozen. My heart felt tight again. Shame tried to whisper that I hadn't really changed, that peace was just a dream. I hurried home, locked the door, and sat on the floor. My chest ached with silent tears. I thought, maybe I'm not strong enough. Maybe this new life isn't for people like me. For a long while, I stayed that way, staring at nothing. Then something gentle stirred in my heart, not loud, but steady. It was like he was letting me know that healing takes time. That wounds don't disappear overnight, but he walks with us through them. I realized that peace isn't about forgetting the past. It's about knowing that the past no longer has power to define you. That night, I picked up the little book Rania had given me. I read a story about a woman who once made many mistakes, yet Jesus looked at her with love and said she was forgiven. As I read, I felt comfort wrap around me again, not because my pain was gone, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. I wiped my tears and whispered, "You are still with me." And deep inside, I knew he was. Weeks passed, and my heart continued to grow stronger. The more I spent time with the women, the more I understood that forgiveness was not just something I received, it was something I could give. I began to pray quietly for people who had hurt me, even those I once thought I could never forgive. It wasn't easy at first. The memories still stung, but each time I prayed, the pain seemed to lose a little more of its grip. One morning, I met a young woman at the market who looked tired and lost, the same way I used to look. She was arguing with a vendor, her voice full of anger and frustration. When our eyes met, she looked away quickly, embarrassed. I don't know what came over me, but I walked up to her and said softly, "It's okay. You're not alone." She stared at me for a moment, then tears filled her eyes. We ended up sitting together near a fruit stand, just talking. She told me about her struggles, a broken home, guilt, and loneliness. As she spoke, I saw myself in her words. I listened, really listened, like Rania had once done for me. I didn't know how to fix her problems, but I knew what to say. I told her that God still sees her, that He can bring peace even to the most broken heart. She looked at me like she wanted to believe but didn't know how. I smiled and said, "I didn't believe at first either. But when I asked for His forgiveness, peace found me." She didn't reply, but I could see something change in her eyes, a quiet hope. That day, as I walked home, I felt a deep joy I hadn't known before. I realized that forgiveness doesn't just heal you. It makes you a light for others who are still in the dark. I had once thought my story was full of shame, but now I saw it as a story of grace, one that could help someone else find the same peace I found. Looking back now, I see how far I've come. I began as a woman buried under shame, thinking my life was too broken to matter. But God met me in that place, not with anger, not with judgment, but with love that healed me piece by piece. I didn't find a religion, I found a relationship. I didn't find rules, I found peace. Every day I still learn. I still fall sometimes, but I no longer stay down. I know now that forgiveness isn't just a one-time moment, it's a journey. It's waking up each day and choosing to believe that His mercy is still new. It's choosing to walk in love even when others don't understand. To every believer, to every heart that's ever felt unworthy, I want to say this: don't run from God when you fail. Run to Him. He isn't waiting to punish you, He's waiting to restore you. When you study His Word, you'll find strength. When you pray, you'll find comfort. And when you love others, you'll begin to see His heart reflected in your own.